Ladies and gentlemen, what is up, and welcome today to an early ability review for Punisher 2099 and Carnage. So big shout out to the homeboy MCOC Mod, managed to get the video up for the abilities, and apparently at some point later this week we're going to actually have the gameplay. But for now we have the abilities, we have the numbers, so we can dive a little bit into Punisher and Carnage and kind of have a look at how viable these champions are going to be, potentially some interesting strategies for them. Now with Punisher, where I want to start is the Synergies, because this is actually the first character to kind of follow the Transformers model of Synergies, which I love in that game. Transformers at the moment, not really too hype, but they've done a few things right and a little bit better than Marvel Contest of Champions, and one of the things is having very unique and interesting synergies with different characters, and Punisher appears to be the first character in Marvel Contest of Champions that is going to go down this avenue. So his synergy bonuses, again, they're unique to every single character, and they do very interesting stuff. So his synergy with the classic version of Punisher, he will begin the fight with an additional 20% power meter. He will also give a synergy back to the Punisher that does plus 20% fury and bleed ability accuracy. So yeah, more bleeds, more fury. That's always good to have on the Punisher, vice versa there. So seems like a very, very good synergy between the two Punishers. But also all of these synergies are unique synergies, so they will not stack with multiple versions of the character. But it's a bit of an interesting one there. And then we also have Loyal Minister with Captain America. So he will begin the fight with 15% additional battery charge. Sorry, the first one with Punisher was actually 20% power meter, not battery charge, guys. Mistakes were made. But Captain America is 15% additional battery charge, and also in return, he will give Captain America plus 15% attack while the opponent is either fatigued or stunned. So that's not really a huge thing for Captain America, but it's quite nice to have for Punisher by the look of it. So let's move on to the final one, which is actually a synergy with the God of Thunder himself. Let's scroll down a little bit here while I'll just move along in the video with 4. So the synergy is called Believer. So the first use of the nanotech battery is immediately recharged. Bit of an interesting one there. Basically gives a little bit more power. So that's pretty interesting. And also has plus 10% fury potency with 4. I'm not too sure that's going to be super helpful with 4, but any scenario where you might need to get something off in regards to the nanotech battery quite quickly, this might be a very helpful synergy to have for the character. So I really like these synergies. I think they're all very interesting. I think they're all very unique, and that's what I want to see a little bit more of in Marvel Contest of Champions, just instead of like a flat, like, here's a little bit of crit rating or a little bit more attack. I really like all this stuff. So it's definitely a good direction, in my opinion, for the game to head down in terms of champion design. But anyway, let's talk about his abilities. So I think before going to the signature ability, we'll come back to that in a second, but let's talk initially about his nanotech charging. So Punisher 2099 kind of operates off a battery system, much kind of like Dormammu's like dimensional charges, if that's any point of reference at all. So he'll begin the fight with 25% of his maximum charge, and every 5 seconds the battery will trigger a recharge. So you recharge more the less buffs your opponent has. So if your opponent has 0 buffs, every 5 seconds it's going to be 6%, 1 buff it's going to be 4%, or 2 or more buffs it's going to be 3%. So yeah, the more buff opponents, it's actually going to be a bit of a trickier matchup. Initially, when looking at the data mined ability without any values, we assumed it was going to be more charge for more buffs on the opponent, but it looks like it's been the inverse to that. And then scrolling down, let's talk about the nanotech automatic effects. So whenever the opponent activates a regeneration buff, 20% of the battery is drained to infect the opponent with nano inhibitors and heal block them for 8 seconds, and this debuff automatically reapplies itself if a regeneration buff is still active when it expires. So it doesn't look like if a regeneration buff is active when this expires, it doesn't look like it's going to regen, kind of drain the battery to reapply it. It doesn't mention that anywhere, but it might do. But if it doesn't drain the battery, and for example, if you're on a Wolverine matchup, like in Realm of Legends, where he just keeps on regenerating and regenerating and regenerating, it kind of looks at the moment that, providing he's under a regen, the heal block is going to stay up. So yeah, a bit of an interesting one there. So the next one is Punisher drops below 10% health. This is his regeneration here. The battery is drained entirely, allowing Punisher to regenerate for It's 60 health over 10 seconds for each percentage drained. So on this Punisher, you know, that's going to be about 6,000 health over 10 seconds, which is roughly about 20%. You know, that'll get them up to 30%. Again, it's not really a huge regeneration, and providing that's under the ideal scenario where the battery is at 100%. So the regen, it doesn't seem that great. Like, looking at it now, it seems a little bit rubbish, and also it might kind of screw up a strategy, you know, if you accidentally get under, you know, 10% health and you need to, like, use your battery charge for maybe something else, like a heal block. Maybe this actually might be a little bit of a negative, but I'm not really too sure on that. It just doesn't really seem like strong enough to be an exciting feature of the champion, but I'm not too sure on that one yet. We're gonna have to wait and see. So the next one is Punisher lands a heavy attack, so you can drain 15% of the battery to stun the opponent for 1.5 seconds. This doesn't seem very great at all. I don't really see many scenarios where you use this. So let's move down the list of abilities a little bit more before we go back to the signature ability. So when the battery hits, let's go back a little bit more, a little bit too quick there. So when the battery hits 100%, immediately goes into overcharge, continually drains. It can also not recharge until it is drained entirely and switches back to recharge mode. While in overdrive, Punisher gains 34.7 additional attack rating for each remaining percentage of the battery, and his attacks cause his opponent to gain 90% less power. So, you know, 30 or pretty much 35 attack doesn't sound a lot when you just see it like that, but, you know, this is going to be times 100 for each percent, so it's going to start off with pretty much like double and a bit attack, so that's 3,500 for a rank 5 Punisher. So it seems alright, it seems pretty powerful, and also the fact that your opponent is going to be gaining 90% less power. I think there are some tactical ways you can use this. So yeah, interested to kind of play around with that overdrive mode. I think, you know, one of the things initially looking at Carnage and Punisher, these seem like some of the like the hardest champions I have ever seen to predict like exactly how good they're going to be, because I think there are so many like different tests you're going to need to do. So I think in terms of like a 5-star at the moment, I was thinking for going either one as a 5-star. I think I'm definitely going to need to do some testing with a 3-star before I'm fully sold on either. But anyway, let's continue. The special one, the Punisher momentarily switches his battery into overcharge mode, gaining 16% charge over 8 seconds. That seems pretty good for kind of like ramping up in terms of your battery drain and getting a little bit of power there. It's converting your power into battery power, so some interesting stuff there. And also quickly moving on a little bit down to the special 2. So all shots fired on the special 2 will drain 20% of the battery to activate auto targeting, which means opponents won't be able to trigger a passive evade on your special 2, and you also gain additional 900 crit rating, and also you have 100% chance to armor break, removing 2100 armor rating and applying a debuff for 10 seconds. If the battery has at least 10% charge, it expends the amount to double the duration of the armor break debuff. So in most scenarios, I would assume you're probably going to have over 10% when you use this. So yeah, it's a pretty big armor rating debuff there for 20 seconds. Seems pretty decent there. And finally, my head's a little bit in the way for this one, but on the special attack 3, so 50% of the battery is drained to disintegrate the opponent, dealing 4,626 direct damage, so that's about 150% of his attack over 10 seconds, and reducing their power gain rate by 90%. So that doesn't seem too bad, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like powerful enough for a special 3 in terms of what it does. I mean, just looking at that, one of the first comparisons that comes to mind is Ghost Rider, who, especially with like all of your judgments active, you can quickly make it so you can kind of power lock your opponent for about like 20-30 seconds, you know, if you have used the special 3 without any judgments active on them. So yeah, I'm not really too sure about that. I think in terms of looking at the abilities, the hype has gone down a little bit for Punisher, but finally we're gonna pop back to his signature ability. So let's just see if we can quickly find that. So a last-minute upgrade to the Punisher's arsenal allows him to begin each fight with an additional 15% charge in his nanotech battery, and also gains a new nanotech automatic effect. So opponent hits max power meter, minus 50% of the battery is drained to drain 5% of the opponent's power and power lock them for 8.5 seconds. Damn, I actually hadn't seen this. This seems pretty pretty insane. Very good for dealing with Mystic Dispersion, very good for dealing with All or Nothing there. It's a big drain of the battery, and you need to be prepared for it. But that's very, very interesting. So yeah, that's gonna basically mean that yeah, you know, providing you can play, you know, stay above 50% battery, you're not gonna get special freed. So yeah, pretty exciting thing there in regards to Punisher. So, kind of the initial vibe that I'm getting from Punisher is I really like his design. I think he's going to be a very fun character to play. He's going to be very useful as well in terms of his heal block and also ability to control opponent's power. But nothing seems like super crazy OP or so incredibly good that I don't think he's going to be the character to kind of like change the game and like totally wreck everything. So he seems okay, but I'm not really sold on this character as a super good character at the moment. But again, like, a lot of testing does need to be done with this character. There are a lot of question marks. So yeah, I'm interested to play around with Punisher 2099 when he comes out. I think we're definitely going to get him as a free stock, because testing him is going to be so fun. But anyway, let's move on to Carnage, guys, the main event right here. So let's go straight into the abilities. Oh, actually, let's talk about the synergies. So Carnage doesn't have kind of the same setup as Punisher, where they're going with the Transformers Forged Fight style synergies. He kind of has the classic ones, but there's a little bit of a unique one with Venom. So Venom and Carnage gain +1 to their maximum number of genetic memory or hyper mutation buffs. So this is a bit of an interesting one. Like, the main things that really interest me about this first synergy is it going to stack with like multiple Carnages? So if I have like a 3-star, a 4-star, and a 5-star Carnage, can I increase that, you know, limit of 5 to a limit of 8, and then maybe make like some real insanity happen there? So that's kind of one of the first things thinking about when looking at Carnage. Like, I'm interested to try that out. A lot of questions there. Apart from that, he has additional crit with Deadpool, a little bit of additional attack with Spider-Man, and health with Agent Venom, Venom-Paul, and Symbiote Spider-Man. And let's move on to his signature ability in bio. So basically, his signature ability is exactly the same as Venom's, but instead of crit on Venom, it's actually power gain on Carnage. So at max level, it's up to 30% increased power gain while your opponent is bleeding, and the longer the opponent is continuously bleeding, the greater the bonus, up to 20 seconds. So I'm not really too sure kind of how the scale's going upward, but it's a bit of an interesting one, and it does look like there are going to be strategies for Carnage to kind of maintain his bleed 24/7, and we'll talk about those as we go through his abilities, because Carnage is one of the characters I'm incredibly interested in. So first off, we talk about his kind of passive abilities. So Carnage is kind of like a Venom that you can control exactly which buff he gets. So by performing different combos, you can get different buffs. So when he's struck, you get resist physical. When you're blocking, you can get block proficiency. When you do a light attack, you can get crit rate. When you do a medium attack, and I think this is going to be the one that a lot of people are going to go for, you get Fury, and the Fury looks to be about like 40% of Carnage's maximum attack. So, you know, if you can stack this up 5 times, that is an additional 200% attack. If you can stack it up 8 times, that is an additional, you know, 320% attack. So yeah, some real interesting stuff there. And also the heavy attack gives additional crit damage, but I think for the most part, like genuinely, when it comes to increasing the character's damage output, like Fury for the most part is the one to go for, I'd say. And then we move on to the special attack. So each time Carnage activates a special attack, he begins to mutate for 10 seconds, and once the mutation ends, he copies the current symbiotic creation as a permanent buff, and a maximum of 5 permanent buffs. But again, you can increase this by Venom. I don't know if you can increase this like multiple times via multiple Carnages and Venoms, but I'd certainly like to find out. So yeah, you might be able to get this up to a maximum of 8 permanent buffs, which might make for some pretty craziness. So the next thing, which I did double take the first time I read this. So critical hits, if the target is already bleeding, you gain an 80% chance to bleed, dealing 88 damage over 0.5 seconds. So again, it's pretty much like one bleed tick, But one of the very interesting synergies, especially with this bleed, because this bleed literally is only about, I think it's like 3-4% of Carnage's maximum attack. It really is nothing at all. But one of the very interesting things about having such a short bleed is this is going to be like, well, pretty much increased by 5 times if you have the Deep Wounds Mastery, because it's going to increase the bleed from 0.5 seconds up to 3 seconds if you have the Deep Wounds Mastery. So it gains a huge benefit from that. But is it going to be enough? I don't know, but the fact that it has an 80% chance to proc on crits, that's potentially like a lot of bleed there, especially if you have a good team synergy. But I think there's going to be a lot of like a lot of debate in regards to which, you know, what is the best way to play Carnage. Because, you know, it looks like Fury might be a good way, but alternately, you know, you could maybe get like 5 crit buffs and mutate those into permanent ones, and then just like have all these crazy bleeds going off. But I'm not too sure if that's a strategy that will work. Again, a lot of hypothetical scenarios being thrown around here. So we have 2 ways to trigger the bleed, and the first one is 100% chance to inflict bleed on any heavy attack, so that will deal roughly about 60% of Carnage's attack as direct damage over 10 seconds, so a pretty damn decent bleed off the heavy there. But I imagine, you know, if you're like me, I don't like using heavy attacks too much. Like they're a little bit clunky to get off. So most of the time, I would assume the special attack 1 and 2, they don't have anything apart from additional crit rating, which is cool. It's nice to have, you know, some big numbers up there. I'm sure that's going to give you some bleed stacks, but there is a really big bleed associated with the special attack 3. So again, my head is in the way of a couple of numbers here, but it's 100% chance to inflict bleed, dealing, it's about, I think, about 350 to 400% of Carnage's attack as direct damage over 20 seconds. So I think especially when Carnage is awakened, there's a really good chance that you can just keep on playing this character and chaining on the special freeze, just keeping this bleed active, keeping the crazy damage going. But again, I just don't really think, like, you know, it looks to me like at the moment there are kind of 2 ways to play Carnage, and one of them involves a lot of heavy attacks, and the other one involves, like, watching the special animation, free animation, like, 1,000,000 times every fight. So, I don't know, I'm not really down for that. I don't really like either 2 of those kind of gameplay designs or models. So yeah, I don't know, it's just me being a little bit cynical, but the special free animations, they are very fun at first. But again, when you know, it's kind of a staple of the character and the rotation, and it looks like to kind of optimally play Carnage, you just want to use that special attack free over and over again and build up the Fury and build up the crit and get all this stuff. It just might be very fatiguing playing this character, just continually getting to the special free over and over again on long fights. So yeah, I'm not really too sure about that. Maybe I'm being a little bit cynical for the offset, but I think that's one thing that may have, like, at the moment, slightly put me off going for a 5-star Carnage. I'm not 100% sold on Punisher, I'm not 100% sold on Carnage. I think Carnage definitely has, so, you know, a lot of potential to be one of those champions that just, you know, ramps up and does some crazy damage. But in terms of his rotation and stuff, I don't know, I'm just, like, looking at this stuff, I'm just not down for just continually, like, using a lot of special free attacks. Like, it does get a little bit wary, but I don't know, maybe it might not be an issue. Maybe he's going to be, like, so ridiculously fun to play that we're all just going to forget about it. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, again, that is it for my thoughts and early abilities overview for both Carnage and Punisher 2099. So I think both of the characters, they're going to be a really good addition to the game. Like, Punisher seems like really fun in terms of his utility and stuff, and Carnage just looks to be a very hard-hitting bleed champion with a bit of, like, depth in regards to kind of how you, like, build up his buffs and stuff, and there seem to be a few different ways to play him and a few things I want to test out. But again, I'm a little bit cynical. I'd much prefer, like, the bleed to come from a special 2. Just because those special free animations, boys, watching them over and over again, it's a little bit too long. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed today's video review and early look at both of these characters' abilities. What do you think in the comments below? Are you hyped for these characters? Do you think I've missed anything or any of their uses? Be sure to let me know. Apart from that, guys, hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Take care and have an absolutely fantastic day.